So, after the death of J-Mo, we saw Lamar taking charge of the 12th Street Boys, but Filmel is actually alive, and he'll definitely be back at some point. We saw Lamar working the refined angle on Monique, just like Slick told him to do, and this put Meech out, with her and his family. He's been kicked out of the house, and he's got nowhere else to go. But that's not his only problem, because as he solves one with Pat, another one pops up with B-Mickie, Kato, and Lamar as well. And towards the end of this episode, we found out Lamar is the one who Terry thinks was behind the shooting, so Terry thinks anyway, but we don't know exactly for sure, because there's also the issue with B-Mickie, and a lot of people actually think it could have even been B-Mickie himself. But hopefully it's something we find out at some point this season. And we also got our first look at Pastor Swift, Snoop Dogg, for the first time on BMF. But we're going to go through all things episode 3 in this review and recap. But of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything BMF and Power Universe related. But this episode kicked off with Big Meech telling us that they come from a God-fearing household. The Bible in their living room was always open on the same verse. We was just poor as shit, which was caused by all this other drama, and they were definitely a poor family. We saw it in the first episode when Terry opened the fridge and there was no food inside, and where he had to boil water just to wash himself. And in this episode it was the same case. When Meech opened the fridge, they had nothing, and when they broke Lucille's china, they got their asses whooped together. But they've always rolled together, that's how it was, win or lose, as we saw throughout this episode with Terry pushing Meech to get in on the business 50-50. But as we come to the present day, Pat pulls up on Meech and his car is wrapped as if he's ready to just drop a body. A scare tactic to show Meech that he's not playing. He wants his money in 6 days, otherwise he was going to make it rain on him. He didn't care about his personal problems with T being shot because he calls personal problems excuses, and he still wants his money regardless. But this is where Meech starts to have hallucinations of J-Mo, something out of a horror movie. He's seeing J-Mo's blooded face, and one way to understand hallucinations is if someone's been in your life and been a presence in your life, someone of significance, your brain actually gets used to predicting them, which is actually from the book Consciousness and Cognition, and this gives a deeper understanding of hallucinations and how the brain thinks and why people have them at specific moments. But he's given 6 days to produce Pat's money, and he knows it's a push for Meech to do, especially with his situation and all the territory that he's just lost to the 12th Street Boys over the last 2 episodes already. But this is how Pat keeps his foot on their neck, under him, and we all know Meech and Terry have ambitions of surpassing Pat and working on their own. But Pat will definitely want to keep putting pressure on them to keep them under his thumb. So Meech and Terry were going to have to come up with something new to sell their product, because they were finding it tough to sell as it is. He gave his crew an incentive with his Rolex, but with B-Mickie, he said he was going to handle shit. But Meech didn't like the way he was speaking to him, and there is definitely some issues between the two. Just like I mentioned in my recap of the first episode, there's going to be issues between B-Mickie and Meech, because B-Mickie is someone who wants to make decisions for himself and do shit on his own, just like how Terry and Meech want to get out from under Pat's thumb. He even starts to question Meech's decision making with the food truck idea, and I've been reading a lot of comments over the past few days, and some people even think that B-Mickie was the one behind shooting Terry, because of how eager he is to make decisions and run his own shit the way he wants. But I don't think it's B-Mickie personally. Like he said, they have their issues. I don't think he'd go as far as to shooting Terry, but who knows. But Meech comes up with a food truck idea with the help of Fonzo's truck, where they start selling their special stone burgers, which is of course their crack, which helps them get out of this tight jam that they were in with Pat. A tight spot which was made even worse when they were at the strip club and Pat rolled up on them, telling them that they've even got less time, especially if they're up enjoying themselves, spending their money. But Meech did manage to make the money for Pat, but one thing you don't do is hit your own product, which we saw when Meech eventually did deliver his money to Pat later on in this episode. He was high off his own shit, which actually took Meech by surprise, and would probably make him start to question the person who taught him the game. We always talk about the student surpassing the teacher, and they're really started to build this story with Pat and Meech now. But let's talk about Pastor Swift, who's played by Snoop Dogg. He's a spiritual advisor to the Flannery family. He's the man of the word with the aura of an ex-con who believes in the power of the Lord. He helps the family welcome Terry home, and Pastor Swift eventually integrates himself into every aspect of the Flannery life, helping the family find a lawyer and becoming a confidant. And as the season goes on, Charles won't like the fact that how much influence and how much involved Pastor Swift becomes with the family, causing even more issues, which I'm sure they don't need, especially after this episode. But we probably will see Pastor Swift most likely introduce him to his niece, who'll take on his case with regards to his botched eye surgery. But we see Meech get his key taken away by Charles, but it was actually Charles who gave his key and left the house later on in this episode, when he found out that Meech paid for the mortgage, something that Lucille knew about after she spoke to Meech, but didn't tell Charles. And he's a man of principle and a man of God, just like the opening quote told us that the Bible was always open in their living room, and he was always against taking Meech's dirty money from the outset. He was never going to change his mind. But Meech was there to protect his family, and he wanted to help them in any way he could, so he did. he paid for the mortgage without even telling them, which is going to cause further cracks in what's already a fractious relationship, especially because Charles isn't stupid. He knows that Wanda never got no Mercedes from her uncle, and that Terry could be involved in Meech's drug business, and it's just a matter of when he finds out, not if, and what the consequences are going to be, because Terry is Charles' star boy. But let's go through all things Lamar and what we saw from him in this episode. And I went through how him being in a mental health facility didn't exactly help him, because he was already mentally ill before he went in, which the showrunner gave us a bit more background on. But with J-Mo missing and Filmel being beaten to an inch of his life, this is where Lamar takes over the 12th Street Boys. But with Filmel being alive, this is definitely a problem for Lamar. There is no way he's just going to get into his car and leave. Him and J-Mo go way back, they grew up together as kids, and he was next in command, and with J-Mo's death, he'd probably be the leader of the 12th Street Boys. He knows that Lamar had something to do with J-Mo disappearing, so he'll definitely be back at some point to try and get revenge and take back what's his. But just look at how scared Filmel looks when he saw Lamar behind the balloons, and this was a crazy side to Lamar. You saw the fear in his eyes, but I do think we'll see Filmel versus Lamar again at some point. But Lamar told the 12th Street Boys that he wanted to take everything from the 50 Boys. Once their pockets were full, first they were going to cripple their business, then they were going to take over as they're struggling, and that's when they were going to snap them. And one way that Lamar is planning to hit the 50 Boys is from the inside with Kato's help. She's ambitious, and she wants to climb the ranks of their organization, just like she told B-Mickie. But they all started to trust her a little more by sending her to one of the stash houses in the last episode, and she tells Lamar that they're just beginning to trust her. But Lamar wants to know everything, who's holding, where they're keeping their product, and where they're keeping their money. And we don't actually know what Kato told Lamar, apart from that there's issues between Meech and B-Mickie. And Kato working for Lamar is a big issue for Meech, because this is the last thing he needs, as they're struggling already with the territory that was taken by the 12th Street Boys. They've got issues with Detective Bryant, who won't be able to help them as much because they've got a new chief in charge, and Lopez is sniffing around on J-Mo's disappearance. He's also got the issues with his own crew with B-Mickie, and Meech has got nowhere else to go because Lamar's now back in with Monique, and he's also now in control of the 12th Street Boys. Now there is no way Meech is going to back down, and there's no way Lamar will back down. And they're going to clash again, that's for sure. This is just the beginning of the war between the 12th Street and the 50 Boys, but Filmel is definitely going to have a huge part to play, in my opinion. I can't see him riding off and disappearing. He'll definitely be back, and if and when he does return, who will the 12th Street Boys follow? Lamar or Filmel? But that was episode 3, which was very much a bit story building and a character development episode, which I think was needed after very good first 2 episodes of action, because there's a long story they're telling with BMF with characters such as Lamar, B-Mickie, and Kato. Of course there's Meech and Terry as well, but they're building up a lot of story because this is going to be a long series. But let me know what you guys thought of episode 3 down below in the comment section. I want to know what you guys think between the issue between Meech and B-Mickie, and what you think will happen between the two. And of course, let me know your thoughts on Lamar versus Meech as well, and how they're building up the story between the 12th Street Boys versus the 50 Boys. So drop all your thoughts down below, and of course if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything BMF and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.